Morning, everybody, and welcome to Proline TV. Andy Iskoe and Jim Feist, and we're going to talk about money. Andy, we have some stuff going on here in Las Vegas that is real money, and they announced
serious money
today. I'm going to show you here. There it is, printing some $1 million in $100 bills. The Circa came up with a contest, or actually 3 contests. And I want to say this up front. You can't play them unless you join. And a lot of people in Nevada, of course, can because it's inside the state. But if you're not inside the state, you need a proxy. And my good friend Andy Iskoe, not only does he work and produce the logical report, the logical approach, he also is a proxy. So, Andy, I want you to tell everybody how this works. And I'm going to bring up a screen here to give you an idea of how big this is. Circa just came out with an announcement, $21 million in guaranteed prizes. They got 3 contests, the Circa Million, the Circa Survivor, and now a brand new one. And what the heck's that one called, Andy?
Yeah, I think this ad probably was previous to the announcement on Thursday, which was like the day that everyone's been waiting for the 3rd contest. We didn't know it was going to be a contest. We didn't know if it was going to be Derek Stevens, the owner, operator, man in charge of the Circa and the related property sports books, had something up his sleeve. It was a well-kept secret. Secret turned out to be, well, you remember the guy who built Caesar's Palace and Circus, Jay Sarno?
Yes.
He was a big developer, and prior to his death, I don't know, probably about 30, 40 years ago, he had planned to build the world's largest resort. I think about 6,000 to 8,000 hotel rooms with a casino and all that. And he was going to call the project Grandissimo, which I guess is sort of an Italian sounding word for like spectacular or something along those lines. Well, Derek is resurrecting that with a brand new contest. And if you'd like, Jim, we can start off by talking about that contest, or we could talk by the existing contest. You mentioned about the proxying and being involved. You do have to sign up in Las Vegas in person or in Reno and other parts that have
tell
Circa
everybody
properties.
how to get a hold of you and how to
Sure.
What they have to do. If in Las Vegas and Nevada, you don't have this problem. But if you're outside the state and you want to play, and there's going to be a lot more outside the state playing than inside the state playing in these contests, because they come to Vegas, tell them what they have to do to get started, and then how to get a hold of you. Give them the logical report, your address, phone number, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, there are 3 main contests, what I guess you would call high-end contests that involve entry fees of $1,000 or more. 3 of them are run by Circa. I think there's 4 right now run by Westgate. Those are the 2. Well, the Westgate is the longest one. That started the Super Contest back, I want to say, and you were here at the time, Jim. I believe it started in 1988 as a way to regenerate some enthusiasm because the NFL went on strike in 1987, and a good part of the season was just canceled and never played. So I think that, or at least part of the season was, and I think that contest has been going strong since then. 7 years ago, let's see, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think like 2018 or 2019, Circa came around and introduced a contest similar to it. A few years later, they introduced a Survivor contest. And then after that, they introduced a contest, the one we'll talk about. In any event, you do need to be within the state of Nevada at a Circa-owned or operated property to sign up. You meet with either me or some other proxy. There are a lot of very good proxies out there. It's become sort of like a cottage industry over the last 7, 8 years. And you authorize the individual as your proxy to submit the selections on your behalf because you're not in the state of Nevada during the football season. Or if you are, sometimes you travel out. I actually proxy for some people who are local, who take some vacations or out of Nevada for several weeks during the season, but need to get their selections in. So you only need to be in Las Vegas or any, basically Reno, Tahoe, that area, once to sign up with your proxy, appoint the proxy, and then you and the proxy communicate the weekly information. What I do, for example, is when the lines are posted, and I'll explain all that in a bit, the contest lines are posted, I send out emails to all the people I proxy for saying, here's the link to the lines, or sometimes I'll attach a PDF copy of the lines if I'm able to in time. And those are the lines, and then they email me their selections prior to a deadline that I establish, which is prior to the absolute deadline for the contest, because I do need time to make sure that the contest selections are in there. If there's a computer issue or issue with the apps or something, I've got plenty of time to get down physically to the property itself. So I do have a deadline that's a little bit ahead or a little bit earlier than the official entry, because the official entry deadline, once that hits, okay, I think it's 4 p.m. Pacific time for the Circa contest on Saturday. You try to put your selections in at 4:01, you're locked out. So that's important. So the process, the communication process.
Interrupt. This is for all the contests, not just Circa.
Well, the deadline, the entry deadline is different for the various contests. But yes, 1 minute past that deadline, you're out of luck.
But if you want to join the Westgate or the Golden Nugget or whatever, they all have, you have to come here to Nevada and get a proxy and sign up locally, physically.
Yes, correct. With the proxy, you have to appoint the proxy, and they have it on record, so that proxy, in theory, is the only one able to submit the selections on your behalf. Okay. Now, as I say, now I know that, for example, there are a lot of people in Southern California who come to Las Vegas every weekend, and they put the selections in themselves. Now, it is always advised that and maybe it's for a very, very minimal, if any, fee at all, sometimes it's for friends or whatever, that they do have a proxy just in case they can't make it one weekend or something comes up. So someone will put the selections in for them that they've authorized, but they still have to authorize that person in person when they sign up.
For example, I live in Las Vegas. It's very easy for me to do it myself, but I use Andy as a proxy, and I live right down the street from the Westgate and Circa. But if something happens, I have a proxy right there. I mean, I can put the entries in over, just over the computer because I'm here. Yeah. But if I had to go out of town, or if I get sick or something happens, I can't make it.
By the way, excuse me, Jim, not only that, for a lot of people in Las Vegas, they're busy on Saturdays betting college football in games, to new games that are starting. They don't have the time to take a break and start thinking about it. So they need, you often send me your selections like a day earlier. Okay. So you've decided on Friday, but there are a lot of people, many people, who decide right up until my deadline, which is around, I think it's like noon for the Circa, for example, to working on their selections. But a lot of people, for example, here in Vegas, are busy making the bets, whether they're doing it over their apps, whether they're doing it on the computer, whether they're doing it over the phone, whether they're doing it at a sports book. So yes, that's the reason why it's always good to have a proxy, even if you are in Las Vegas, because you're involved in so many things during the day. And again, that's an absolute deadline.
Now, you can see on the screen, logicalapproach.com. That's Andy's email address, and I'm sure you can just write him an email.
No, that's the website address. Let me give you the phone number for people who want to call or text, and also the email address to use. Email address is fairly simple. It's Vegas Andy, VEGAS ANDY 711, Vegas Andy 711 at Cox. Yeah, I have a great affinity for convenience stores. That's where the 711 is in there. Nothing to do with craps. At cox.net, cox.net. So Vegas Andy 711 at cox.net, or the phone number 702-898-9802.
Okay, now we've done that. Why don't we bring up the contest again and tell everybody what this is all about, how much it is.
All the details.
All this. I'm going to let you run with this, and I'll be right back, and you go ahead with this.
All right, and basically what we're going to do, we'll probably have at least two of these videos. One will be the one we're doing today for the Circa contest. The Westgate also has a number of contests. I think I mentioned 4, maybe, it's 4, but they also have some in-season contests, as does the Circa. They announced their rules and all the details July 1st. That's when they start taking their registrations. The Golden Nugget is another major player. They've had a they've had a contest called the Ultimate Football Challenge that's run for the last probably 8 or 10 years that combines actually college and NFL selections. So you don't have to do all college. You don't have to do all of NFL. You can mix and match if you wish, or you can do all college or NFL. They have yet to announce details, as far as I'm aware, of whether or not they're going to have their contest this year. The Golden Nugget is located downtown, and if they do indeed have their contest, we'll put together a small video for that contest as well. But turning to the Circa, the contest that everyone is more familiar with because it's sort of like a clone of the Westgate Super Contest that has been around for 35, 36 years, is called the Circa Millions. And actually, this is the 7th edition. So it's actually called Circa Millions VII, following the Super Bowl using those Roman numerals. I think the only time the Super Bowl did not use the Roman numerals was for Super Bowl 50, because that had the word L, which is loser. So I think that's why they didn't use it. Then they went to just Super Bowl 50. In any event, Circa Millions is the contest. They have it's a $1,000 entry fee. And I believe you're allowed up to 10 entries in that one. It's 5 or 10. I don't have the current rules in front of me. But in fact, let me at the very beginning give you the website to visit that will have all the information that I'm about to discuss, plus more. It's Circa Sports, www.circa sports. That's CircaSports.com. When you go to that page, they'll have broad information about the various contests with links to each of the 3 contests: the Circa Million, the Circa Survivor, and the Circa Grandissimo. And you can go up there, you can take a look at the structure, the prize structure, the official rules, etc. So I'm going to give you basically an overview. In fact, the Circa Million, I do have it here now, a maximum of 5 entries, $1,000 each. They have a guaranteed prize pool, as they have every year, that in case they don't have enough entries to cover the the prize guaranteed prize pool by entry fees, Circa kicks in the difference. There is no rake in this contest, so you enter it for $1,000. Your $1,000 goes into that prize pool. There's no percentage taken out for administrative costs or things like that. So with a guarantee of $6 million, they need 6,000 entries in order to fully fund the guarantee. If they get 5,900 entries, well, they've got to make up the $100,000 that they don't get from the 1,000 entries. Is that right? Yeah, $100,000, I think it is.
By the way, I have it up on the screen,
yeah.
Andy.
Yeah. What's that?
I have it up on the screen.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
There it is.
Right.
And there's a shot of the sports book up. If you've never seen it, it's the biggest thing I've ever seen.
It's amazing.
Yes, it is.
And there's also Stadium Pool, which is worth a visit anytime you're in Vegas,
Absolutely.
whether you're staying at Circa or not. They do have quarterly prizes. They pay the top 100 for the regular contest. The first prize is guaranteed $1 million. It may increase, because if they get more than the minimum guarantee of 6,000 entries, they take all the excess funds and they split them up between the full season contest and the quarterly contest that pay $300,000 per quarter, and the top 5 contestants or finishers get that money. By the way, and I know it sounds obvious, but there are some people who somehow come up with the question, well, you know, I finished 3rd, okay, but there were 4 people who finished ahead of me. You know, one guy won first, and another guy tied, and 3 other guys tied for 2nd, and I had the 3rd best record. Do I get 3rd place money? No, you would get 5th place money, because the person who won the contest gets 1st place. People who finished tied for 2nd would split 2, 3, and 4 prize money combined together, divide by 3, and it goes down that way for any ties that occur amongst the top 100. I know it's obvious, but you'd be surprised at the number of people who are late in the season. They start thinking, oh my gosh, I'm in 3rd place. Well, you got the 3rd best record, but that's not necessarily 3rd place. So just want to clear that up. In any event, the contest consists of 5 selections a week. On Thursday mornings around 10 o'clock Pacific time, the Circa comes out with the contest lines that are static lines, meaning once that line is out, Buffalo -6 over Miami, Even if there's betting action that has the actual betting line go Buffalo 7, Buffalo 8, or downwards towards Buffalo 5, Buffalo 4, the line is exactly what the contest line is. And there are a lot of people who have had success or tried to have success over the years by playing just the lines move. They're ready to make their contest selections. Contest line is 6. Oh, the line is down to 4. I only have to lay 4. I'll use that as one of my selections on the underdog. I'll take the +6. I'm only getting +4 if I go to the boards. Any number of strategies. In any event, you make 5 selections per week. They're sides only, no totals, no first halves, no second halves, full game only. And you get 1 point for a winning selection, half a point for a push. In the case that there are some postponements, the games must be played by 11:59 p.m. Pacific time on, I believe it's Monday night. So if a game is postponed to Tuesday and you've already put that in for the contest, let's say there's a weather storm on Sunday after the deadline for the contest entrants to be in, and they can't reschedule until after Monday night, say on Tuesday afternoon. If you've had a selection on either side of that game, you get 0 points. Happens almost, I'm not going to say almost never, but that's basically it. It's maybe happened once or twice over the last 5 or 6 seasons. So that is something to keep aware of, but basically 1 point for a winning selection, half a point for a selection that puts. So a lot of people, by the way, will use a strategy. I don't necessarily agree with it because you're limiting yourself, but they will use a strategy where they will not play games that do not have half points involved. They either want to get 0 or they want to get the 1 full point. And
now, how many people have joined these contests? Like, we'll get to talk about the Westgate in a minute, but we're talking with Circa right now.
We're going to do Westgate when those rules come out, which will probably be.
But Westgate has been around longer, and it just announced they have some different entries this year too.
Yeah.
But how many people joined the Circa last year? Do you have those numbers?
I believe it was 5817, something like that. I believe there's actually information on the website.
That was
for the Circa Million. That had a guarantee of the same 6 million last year, so they came up just a little bit short, and there are reasons that I can explain for that. The Circa last year for Survivor Million, which I believe now is in its 5th or 6th year, they guaranteed a $10 million prize pool. And remember, that's winner take all. I'm going to get to that contest in a moment, okay? They guaranteed 10 million, so they needed 10,000 entries. And for a while, it wasn't quite sure, but a lot of people wait for the last week or two to fork over their money and join. You get multiple entries. They have a little rebuy feature for the first week of the season only. If you play the Thursday or Friday, they have a limit of 10 entries. But if you have a losing selection on the Thursday or Friday game, the Dallas at Kansas City, and I think it's the Chargers are involved in the Brazil game. You can rebuy prior to the Saturday afternoon deadline, so you can get more than just the 10 entries. Even though if you do, it means that you've lost your first couple. In any event,
I didn't even know about that.
They started that last year.
I didn't know that.
And it was interesting because. Well, remember that first Monday night game, you had that wild finish with the toe over the line that denied Baltimore perhaps the winning touchdown. But nonetheless, last year, of course, the field was decimated very early on. I think by the end of September, about 90% of the field was gone, largely due to the field having the most obvious selection on in week 1. We'll get to this one a little more in a moment. Cincinnati Bengals over the New England Patriots. And of course, the Patriots pulled the upset, and that was by far the largest, the most often picked selection. To your question, they needed 10,000 to meet the $10 million guarantee. They actually got, I think, 14,000 plus. I think it was like 14,006 or something like that. Gave away 14 million, almost $15 million. 8 people actually survived. In fact, I think, Jim, unless you have any other questions about the Circa Million, I can get right into the Circa Survivor.
Well, Circa Survivor is the big one. I mean, most people won't do it because it's complex, but there's a lot of complexity to it with the Thanksgiving and the Christmas and all that stuff because each one it's very complicated. I don't know if that would be overwhelming to try to explain that, but well,
no, I'm going to explain that in detail. I want to know if you had any more questions that I missed about Circa Millions, because I think I basically explained that's a very simple question, a simple contest. 5 picks a week against a static point spread line. Whoever has the most points at the end of the season wins. In years past, if you hit 60%, you were almost going to finish somewhere in the top 20. but that was back prior to 2010 when Sports Center, when the Friday night Sports Center with Chris Berman and all that, their 2-minute drill and all that sort of stuff, they started paying attention to the Super Contest. For almost all the years from 1988 through about 2010, that contest would draw about 275 to 525 entries. It was basically a locals contest. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have the capability for submitting things over an app. We didn't have our cell phone. We didn't have, I think at that time, even the ability to enter them in computers. You still had to be here in Vegas, but the contest was not that well known, and so they had.
Andy, a good friend of ours, know him well, and you know him well. There was only like 200-300 entries. This was back in the day. It wasn't called Westgate. It was some Hilton.
It was a Hilton. Right. It was the Hilton, then the LVH. Yeah.
And Steve Fezzik won it back-to-back years.
Yeah. And he, by the way, used a lot of that strategy about playing the bad numbers, whether he liked the game or not. He would play. He would follow the actual betting money and take advantage of that. I think that was part of his strategy. But yeah, there were 300 to 500 entries in those times. In 2010, this is where I'm getting to. Sports Center started covering this contest. Wow, a great football contest in Las Vegas. You got to remember the days back then. You didn't talk gambling all that much. Al Michaels would talk about, well, the game isn't quite over for a lot of people, that kind of thing. But it was not as widespread as it is now, thankfully. Right? Thankfully now that it is. But in any event, that attracted people. In fact, that's sort of how I started really getting into the proxying, because I had been doing the Stardust Saturday night radio show, the late great Stardust, before that run ended in 2006, and they turned it into a vacant lot for about 15 years, and now was it Resorts World is there. But in any event, people would hear about the contest, and they would start to inquire how to participate. And I said, the only thing you have to do is you be in Las Vegas to sign up, and you appoint a proxy. Since you're not in Las Vegas, where on a weekly basis, they put the selections in for you, and you're an entrant, and you have an ability to win. And the only other thing you do, and I think they've changed it now, you come back to Vegas to pick up your winnings. Now I think they can express mail it to you, or overnight express or something. In any event, the contest grew from about 500 entries to 700 entries to 1,500 entries. And the year before Circa came into town and radically changed the landscape with their Millions contest, the Westgate had a high of, I think it was about 3,300 entries. And that was from about 2011, which was the first year after ESPN started covering the contest, till I want to say 2018, because I think Circa started in 2019. And that's how that contest grew. And yeah, I'm waiting to do that separately, because I want to see, Jim, what the rules are for the various contests. I can say that the Westgate has they're introducing a high-end Survivor contest of their own, not as high as Grandissimo, but we'll talk about that in a moment. They also have their regular contest, which is the 5 selections a week, with some in-season contests as well. They had a reboot contest last year, which was the second half of the season. But now, as part of your overall entry with the 11 in-season contests, there are contests for the best record over the first 9 weeks and the best record over the second 9 weeks. They've also had a contest that's been running for a number of years. Jim, I think you've been in it before, the Super Contest Gold, which is not quite like Survivor in the way the contest is held. It's basically like the regular Super Contest or the Circa Millions, where you make 5 picks a week, but it's winner take all. Okay, so if you had 100 entries, you'd have $500,000 in the pool, and that goes to one person. And I think they even have tiebreakers, so it really does go to one person. They go backward as many weeks as they need to break the tie, and that's become a very popular contest. But the popularity of Circa sort of prompted Westgate to get involved in that. We don't know the rules of that contest. I imagine they'll be somewhat similar to the Circa Survivor that I'll talk about. And there's been a clamoring for a contest, for a college-only contest, and Westgate has introduced. By the way, entry fee for the Super Contest is it had been $1,500. They lowered it when Circa came in to what Circa charges, $1,000. I understand this year, to build back up the prize pool, Westgate's going back to $1,500. I believe it's still going to be a $5,000 entry for the Super Contest Gold. And the college contest, we don't have all the details on, other than it's supposed to be 7 picks a week for 14 weeks. So it goes from Labor Day weekend through Thanksgiving weekend. And that's going to be a $500 entry fee. But we'll have more information on that probably in about 6 weeks, once the Westgate announces their contest and shows us the rules. and they generally begin accepting entries on July 1st. For Circa, the ones we'll be talking about for the next few minutes, their entries actually started yesterday, Friday, May 23rd at 9 a.m. And I understand, at least during the show, that they on VSIN, they actually had their first contributor to the Grandissimo, which I'll get to after I talk about the regular Circa.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I heard that during the show. They made a point of that. Anyway, this is going to be, I believe it's Circa Survivor 5. And it's basically very similar for people who know across the country, maybe, within your office or other friends, you get together and you pool in your money, you put in a certain amount, and it's a winner take all. King of the hill, last man standing. They call it Survivor. Now, in the first 5 years, they have never had a single winner. I think they had 3 people split the huge prize pot. Last year, as I mentioned, they paid out almost $15 million. They had 8 people tie, and each of those entries got about $1.7, $1.8 million, which is kind of nice for a $1,000 entry fee. You could have up to 10 entries. So if you want to take the maximum, you have $10,000 at stake. Now, the NFL, it involves picking one NFL team per week, no point spread. They just have to win the game straight up, no points involved. The limitation is you can use a team only once. That's where the strategy comes in. And it's further complicated, or I say adds in traditional intrigue. I like this feature. Is in their quest to get a single survivor, which they've never yet had, they said, you know what? Let's add a couple of twists to this survivor contest. And by that, I mean, I think it started 2 or 3 years ago. They said, the NFL season now runs 18 weeks. They play 17 games. Let's split up Thanksgiving into 2 weeks. You got the Thanksgiving Day games. At this point, I think there were only 3 before they introduced the Friday game a few years ago. Maybe they did it the year they introduced the Friday game. We're going to make Thanksgiving into 2 contest weeks. So now the contest will run 19 weeks. It'll consist of the 3, now 4 Thanksgiving games. So you've got 8 teams to choose from.
So they actually manufacture us another week.
Exactly. And then they did the same thing with Christmas Day and the day after Christmas. This year, it's 3 games on Christmas Day. So you got 6 teams to choose from. So basically, the NFL season is 18 weeks. The contest season is 20 weeks if it doesn't end earlier. So you are going to end up using 20 if you can make it to the final week, you will end up having to use 20 of the 32 NFL teams at some point during the season to win straight up. And that's where a lot of strategy comes in.
You can only use a team once. You got to remember
Correct.
that. So if somebody makes a mistake and they've used up all the teams that are playing on Thanksgiving Day, they've basically screwed themselves out of the contest.
Yeah, and now the Thanksgiving, and of course the Thanksgiving Friday counts also. So there are 8 teams. So yes, if you are out of teams, you will automatically be eliminated when that Thursday Friday week ends. Okay, so that's part of the strategy. Now, what I've mentioned to people at the end of the NFL season, when Week 18 is over, we all know what teams every team is going to face. The 17 teams that the New York Jets are going to face. The Monday morning, it'll be in all the papers, on all the websites. Here are your 17 opponents. Your 3 divisional opponents that you play twice, and your 11 non-divisional opponents. That's nice to know, so you can at least start a little bit of idea of where the games are. But then the important part as far as strategy planning is once the schedule is released, which was a week ago this past Wednesday, May 14th. Now you know the sequencing, and that becomes important. Where teams are playing certain teams on the road. Well, you knew they were going to be home and road games when the schedule came out the day after the season ended, but you didn't know the sequence. Now you know which teams are going to play 3 home games back-to-back, 3 road games back-to-back, 2 straight division rivals, 3 straight division rivals. Easy schedule early, schedule late. A lot of people have been doing very little since the schedule came out other than planning their strategy for Survivor. And of course, you've got to keep a lot of things in mind because right now we know when the season starts, these are expected to be the good teams. These are expected to be the bad teams. 2 weeks into the season, you're going to have 3 or 4 teams already that look like you were wrong about your forecast on it. But then again, keep in mind, did they start the season by having to play, for example, Philadelphia and Kansas City back-to-back? Or did they get to start the season by having to play, say, Cleveland and the Giants back-to-back, which explains an 0-2 record or a 2-0 record. So you got to keep those things, in mind as you play out because you want to make sure, and I tell people, I think week 13 NFL Week 13. I think that's the Thanksgiving week. You want to check on that. But there are going to be 8 teams playing, the 6 on Thursday and the 2 on Friday. You really want to make sure that you probably have at least 3, if not 4 of those teams still available. Generally, those are expected to be good teams because they like to put the good teams on the highlighted games on Thursday, Christmas, etc. So you want to plan your strategy to have, I'd say, at least 4, maybe even 5 of those teams if you can happen it. I mean, the key is you always want to make sure you advance. Number 1 goal, advance to the next week. Number 2 goal is to plan it out well enough so that if you're right, and you in fact, as you plan out your 20-week contest strategy, at least this is what I do. I try to have between 4 and 6 teams each week that I'm looking to play. So I may end up have a total of, let's say I use 4 teams a week. So my list will have roughly 18 times 4 is I will have 72 teams that I'm considering. Well, I'm sorry, it'll be 80 because it's a 20-week contest. I got to remember, factor in those 2 separate weeks. I will have 80 teams that I have slotted out, meaning obviously I will have several teams, maybe 7 or 8 times throughout the weeks. And there might be some teams that I may have only 2 or 3 times over the course of the season so that I can look at a glance each week. And by the way, on the website, Circa will show you the grid of the teams that the contestants have used each week so that when you get late in the season and you know, okay, only 18 people can take the Buffalo Bills this week and 38 people can take the Denver Broncos, maybe since I'm one of the people still alive, maybe I can use Buffalo this week, or you save it for as late as possible, but you want to make sure that you advance each week. That's goal number 1. Maximum of 10 entries. The contest runs 20 weeks, guarantee of $15 million. There are situations where people will sell their entries if they're doing well mid-season, or sell a portion of their entry to a group of people. You may even have a contract, but enforcing that contract may be very difficult. As far as the Circa is concerned, the only person that they will make payments to, and I believe they can do it to multiple people, I think the Westgate does it, but the only person who can authorize payments to a partner or something is the entrant whose signature is on the entry form. So you got to make sure if you do a deal with that person, you may have a contract between them.
And you're dealing with a lot of money. So,
yes,
this is life-changing money to a lot of people. Now, obviously, the person that puts up $100,000 to go into an entry, they probably have a lot of,
spare
money
change.
they got throwaway money. It probably doesn't matter to them, but the average person that can put up $1,000 and win 20 million or 15 million, that is a monster situation. It's life-changing stuff. And that's why we're going over this in detail, because part of our program here is the money management, how you're using your money. We have a set bankroll. Most people have a number of dollars that they can enter the football season with and say, okay, if I lose 2,000, I'm okay. But if I start losing 3,000 or 4,000, I'm starting to eat into my mortgage money and my food money and stuff like that. So we're bringing this up because this is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger every year. When you have that many people and they all fly in here one time. And Andy, one other thing, let me ask you this. Can you fly into Reno and do this, or do you have to come to Vegas?
For the Westgate, you have to come to Vegas because I believe they don't have any properties within Nevada outside of Las Vegas. They're single property. Okay. Circa does have some sports books up in the Reno area, Reno and Carson City, Lake Tahoe, that whole area up there, and you can sign up there. In fact, even here in Vegas, there are multiple properties. We have one here in Henderson. We have one called the Pass, which used to be the old El Dorado in Henderson, which is in my part of town. They have the Tuscany, which is very close to the Strip. They have 3 places downtown, the D, the Golden Gate, and of course Circa downtown. So you can use any of those properties to sign up for any of these Circa contests. By the way, Jim, you mentioned something earlier. You asked something earlier, excuse me, about the growth of these contests and what we've seen over the years. The Circa, because they came in, and they're basically their contest, the Circa Millions, which was their first contest, they drew, excuse me, in fact, let me just mute for a second here. drew, remember I mentioned 3,300 entries the year before Circa came in. Well, Circa came in, and things they did. Number one, they reduced the entry fee from 1,500 to 1,000, so they made it more affordable for people to join. They also increased the number of pay places. I think Westgate may have been playing 50 play. They played 20 places for a long time because they only had about 250 to 500 entrants. Well, then as that contest grew, they upped it. And I don't remember if they ever had 100. I think their high was 50 for a number of years when they got to the 3,300. I may be wrong on that. I'll see if I can check when we talk about the Westgate contest. But what happened was Circa came in and said, you know what, we're guaranteeing, at that point, I think they were guaranteeing $1.5 million. They had no idea how many entries they were going to get the first year, because it was competition from a long-established contest, the Westgate. So they had to introduce some attractive features to draw people in. And, of course, they, I think, I forget exactly what, but they did exceed the guarantee that first year, as I recall. In any event, they paid 100 places. So that made that more attractive to go to the Circa contest than the Westgate. And then the introduction and the Circa as well, and then Circa increased Survivor. And here's the key point as far as the entries. Circa Survivor also has an entry of 1,000. Now, I've had a number of clients, let's say 5 years ago, and Circa was the only contest they entered, and they had a $5,000. They said, I'll take 5 entries. Okay, a couple of years later, I think it was 2 years later maybe, Circa comes in and has a $1,000 Survivor contest, which attracted a lot of interest because it's a unique contest. And people who had that $5,000 bankroll started saying, you know what, I'm going to take one of the Survivor entries and I'll only play 4 in the Circa Millions. And that continued to grow as the Survivor continued to grow hugely over the now remaining as the subsequent 4 seasons since then. More and more people have allocated their bankroll, dividing it between the Circa Millions and the Circa Survivor. They've taken more of their bankroll. Let's say their bankroll has gone from 5,000, or their budget has gone from 5,000 to 10,000 now, so that they could buy up to 10 entries. Instead of doing 5 and 5, they might do 3 Circa Millions and 7 entries in the Survivor. And it makes sense. If you got 7 entries in Survivor, yeah, it's $7,000, but you got 7 chances to advance. You're not going to win every, you can allocate, 2 picks here, 1 game here, 1 game, etc. Whereas remember, if you're having 3 entries in Circa, now there's a little bit of a twist to that in a moment, but you're basically spreading out 15 selections that you have to make, 5, 5, and 5 on your 3 entries over, let's say, 13 games when they have 3 bye weeks. So you're duplicating a lot of selections. And most people, if they're really handicapping, the way that a lot of people suggest, they're not going to like all 13 games. They might like 6 or 7. So maybe you want to have 2 entries, and I can take that. I could take, here are the 3 entries I like in both contests, on both cards, and I'll split the numbers 4, 5, 6, and 7, 2 on this entry, 2 on the other. So what they've been doing, Jim, is they've been taking a lot of the money that they would have put into the Pick 5 contest into the Survivor. Now, I will say there's a little twist there, because a lot of people, and they do it for Survivor as well, a group of buddies at work will say, you know what, let's 5 of us get together, we each chip in $200, and we'll buy an entry in Circa Millions or Circa Survivor. So when I say...
There was a group a couple of years ago, I think they were from Chicago. I think there were like 10 or 12 of them. And somehow they managed to get through the whole thing and won it. Yeah. They won a big portion of it. But there were, I think 12 guys in the same pool. They were doing their pooling their money like that. And that's a great way to do it, because you're not putting up all that money, because it's a big chunk for a lot of people. But if you have 10 or 12 guys, the problem is the infighting.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up.
That's the problem.
Well, see, Jim, you and I and 3 other people who are well known throughout the handicapping community, we actually have a situation like that with the Westgate for the last few years. We have the 5 of us pool. I actually started with, I can mention Mark Lawrence. Westgate has a raffle. They give away free entries in the Super Contest each year. Mark happened to win one of the entries, and we were all sitting around, and Mark suggested, why don't we all share the entry, do something like that, or pay Mark $200 since he did win the entry, and we all share. So we have there are 4 of us, not 5, 4 of us, and you have to make 5 picks a week. So we've come up with a nice method that doesn't involve any infighting, because we each get to make a pick, and one of us each week, and it's predetermined before the start of the season, gets to make a second pick. So that's how we get our 5 picks, and we're all okay that if Jim picked Philadelphia and I picked next and I liked Philadelphia, I have another game that I'll pick instead. That works out. But that's a lot different than when you've got one chance to win and you've got to make a pick and you got 12 people trying on one entry to come up with one team that everybody, well, not everybody's going to agree with it, but you need a majority to agree. And that's where the fun comes in.
The bottom line to this is life-changing money for a lot of people. Yeah. Whether you're winning 700,000 or 7 million, it's still life-changing money. And you can if you have a group of people that can split that with you. Now there's rich people, obviously the Grandissimo, somebody put up I don't know. Are we sharing that? Oh, do we know who that person is, or we?
I don't believe they may have said so, but I think they used sort of like an alias or something.
Okay, well, it's probably smart, but obviously the person has a lot of money to put up 100,000. And how many?
Especially this far before the I mean, maybe he's pledged 100,000, but the season doesn't start for 3.5 months.
Yeah, so obviously he doesn't care about putting out the money. It's
right.
That person has a lot. It's the same guy that goes out and buys an $8 million Bugatti or something, and it's just to drive around in. But it for a lot of people, this is life-changing money. It's fun. You're going to bet sports anyway, and the key is this is, and the reason we're extending this and doing this special. It is part of the money management thing that we're talking about. This is money in your pool that you're not going to be able to use doing other things.
In fact, Jim, excuse me for a moment. Maybe we ought to call it specifically here, instead of money management, bankroll management.
Maybe that's even better. But it is definitely, you're using your money and it's not going to be available to you to do anything else with. It's going to be tied up in this contest. However, there's not too many places where you can put up $1,000 and win 15 million or 6 million or whatever the case may be. And the Westgate, we don't have their rules yet, so we can't really talk too much about it. They are the older contest because they started as the Hilton International and et cetera, et cetera. They're going to have big, I'm sure they're going to try to do something to stay with Circa.
Well, that's what they did this year by introducing the Survivor with a $5,000 entry fee instead of a $1,000 entry fee. But we don't know the rules of that contest yet. That's coming out, I guess, at the end of June. But yes, they have been forced or prompted to. I don't know if forced is the right word because it's a decision that they had to make, not that they decided to make, to draw back some of the competition or add a different flavor to it and do things to attract some of the money that had gone. Because there are a lot of people that I proxy for, a number of people who, yes, they will participate in the Circa, but they also go into the Westgate out of loyalty. But keep in mind, there's one thing that we've not talked about. You're going against, let's say last year, you're going against almost 6,000 people in the Circa Millions. You were going against about maybe 1,100 in the Westgate. So the prize fund is smaller in the Westgate, but your chances of cashing a prize are greater, even though Circa pays deeper into the field. It's still the number of contestants that you're going up against makes it a little bit easier. So, the other strategy I say for those of you, and I'll talk about the Super Contest Gold very briefly before we do a full show. There are some people you pay $5,000 for the Super Contest Gold. It was $1,000 for a number of years. Now it's back up to $1,500. Okay. If you enter the Super Contest Gold, by all means, if you're spending the $5,000 on the Super Contest Gold, you sure as hell ought to enter the regular Super Contest as well. Because let's say you have an outstanding year, and let's say you use the same selections in both contests. You could hit 65% in the Super Contest Gold. This is the same format, 5 entry. You hit 65%, and somebody hits 65.5%. You lose. You collect zero. That's 65%. That's 65% that you hit in the gold. If you're using the same entries in the Super Contest regular, you're going to collect probably a 6-figure prize. So don't let that great season that we all hope for go to waste by not entering the regular contest as well, because only one person can win the Super Contest.
A little bit of a personal experience when the Westgate was, and it was a different company name. I hit 63% twice when they were paying a very short field, and I always argued with them that they were doing the wrong thing by doing that, and I have a reason for that. And I didn't collect because, and that because they were only paying short 20
Paying
places.
20 places.
Right. So, and my argument was it's wrong what you're doing because you're not giving enough people a chance to win their money back to come back the following year. You're making
Right.
so, and the reason I was getting that philosophy from is because I play in a lot of World Series poker tournaments and other tournaments that pay much deeper. And the theory behind those poker tournaments is we want to give more people a chance to at least win their money back so that they have to re-enter it and it doesn't become an expense every year.
Mhm.
It becomes fun and you can get your at least part of your money back. The argument was we're not a poker tournament. They were wrong because when the Circa came in and changed it, then they started to realize they needed to have. And one thing we haven't talked about, Andy, and I think this is important. We're running a little long, so I don't want to go too long, but they have these incremental tournaments during the season.
In-season tournaments.
Which are very important because it could be every 4 weeks or 5 weeks, where if you win that little section, you can win a lot of money. And I think what was the Kelly in Vegas won something? She went like 14-1 over a stretch.
Oh, that I think was the mini contest at the Westgate that used to have for the final 3 weeks of the season. You made 5 picks a week, 3 picks.
So now they do that
$10 or $15,000. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, for example, in the quarterly prizes at the Westgate, I think they pay the top 5, and at the Circa, $300,000 per quarter. I believe the top prize, they pay the top 5. It's like $150,000, maybe even a little bit more. The rules split it out.
It's not that you enter here in September, and if you're doing bad, you're done. No, because you have all these incremental ones. So they've upgraded back to the philosophy I wanted them to do in the first place, is give the people a chance to get their money back. Because if you go, let's say the first 2 weeks you go 0-10, well, gee, you're probably saying, well, I got no chance to win this damn thing because, I'm already 0-10. But it doesn't matter because the next grouping, you could go 10-0 and win 150,000.
I'll explain the Westgate because you used a good example. The Westgate has 11 in-season contests in addition to the overall contest, or maybe it's 10 in-season contests. I have to do my math on that. No, it's 11. They have 6 3-week contests. Weeks 1 through 3, best record. 4 through 6, 7 through 9, etc., etc. So that's 6 contests. Then they have 3 6-week contests. 1 through 6, 7 through 12, 13 through 18. That's a second contest. And then they have the 2 contests, which gets it up to 11, weeks 1 through 9 and weeks 10 through 18. So that's 11. You've got 12 chances to cash the overall contest and the 11 in-season contests. I've always felt, Jim, by the way, as another thing. See, the thing with those in-season contests is that you got to have that hot record for the right number, for the right. In other words, let's say you go 5-0, 5-0, 5-0. Well, if it happens to be weeks 4, 5, and 6, you're going to collect. But if it's weeks 3, 4, and 5, you're not going to collect because it's the wrong 3 weeks unless you go 5-0 in that week 6. I've always felt that what these contests should do with the mini contest, that if you had a record that would normally get you a first place prize if it had been the right weeks, like let's say that weeks 3, 4, and 5, you go 15-0 instead of weeks 4, 5, and 6, that you should get your money back. Your $1,000 back as an entry fee for having such a great record. It's not good enough to win the $160,000 or whatever the prize would be, but it's good enough to say, hey, you had a good week. It's sort of like a bad beat. We'll ease the bad beat by giving you your entry fee back. So what they would do is they would say, okay, we're going to have a pool. We're going to set aside a pool of maybe 10% because it's not going to happen all that often that someone's going to have a perfect record over 3 straight weeks, for example, that we're going to set aside 10% of the pool, and we'll use that to fund the few instances where we have to pay off the odd weeks that they have the perfect, and the balance of that 10% goes back into the full pool and increases the pay prices from what was initially listed.
You look back at how this started and how it's evolved. It is so much better now than it used to be.
You remember the Castaways?
Well, I remember that because we won that one back in the day. That was Sonny Reisner.
Sonny Reisner, yeah.
That was a great. Castaways is no more, of course, but that was great. And Sonny, rest in peace. He did a fantastic job there. Vegas has been, we've both been here a long time. I've been here like 6 decades almost. And it's been a lot of fun. I wanted to bring Andy and I wanted to talk about this because not everybody covers it to this detail.
Yeah.
Andy is a proxy. Andy.
Oh, excuse me. By the way, Jimmy, we talked about it earlier, but we never really gave all the details about that Grandissimo. We sort of
I'm just like mention we're running long, and not too many people are going to put up 100,000. But
I'm just going to mention you are. Believe it or not,
you did give the website out. On Circa where they can go read that. But I want you to give out your contact information one more time before we sign off.
Okay, I'll just mention they actually have a limit on the number of $100,000 entries. 2. Okay.
Oh, well,
that's worth mentioning.
I was planning on buying 5, but now they cut me back.
Well, now you got to have 2. You got to have a friend and a half for the other 2, for the other 3. No, I believe, and this is important, I think, or at least of interest. The M Resort, I think around 2010, they had a contest similar with a $100,000 entry fee. It was a pick 5 like the Westgate. They had a total of 7 entries, putting up the $100,000. Now it's 15 years later. They need 15 entries at Circa, so maybe they will get that with inflation and everything. As far as
they'll get that because there's some people with a lot more money than they had 15 years ago, and now the contests have become much more popular. They're much. I mean, a lot of people didn't 15 years ago. A lot of people didn't even know about contests. Now it's out there. And
one last point, and this is important as far as the overall, let's call it psychology of the contest of Survivor. I'm talking about. You know, I use the example where, like in the Super Contest Gold, you could hit 65% and not cash because somebody in the winner take all wins hit 66%. In these Survivor contests, nobody can beat you. The only person who can beat you in a Survivor contest is yourself. As long as you keep picking one winner per week, doesn't matter what anybody else does, you advance. And and it sounds easy. Yeah, you can do it 20 times. But the point is, it's the only contest where you actually control your fate.
Yeah, my intention would be in the Survivor, I'd have 10 entries. And I'd have a strategy, and I'd manipulate. Hopefully, you're down there the last 4 weeks, and if you make it to the last 4 or 5 weeks, you're guaranteed you're going to make some money because you can sell off a piece. You can and I know many people that have done that, and they've made millions just selling off pieces.
Last year was very unusual because I said about 90% of the people I think were eliminated the first month or so. The value they each week they report, or I report it when we do our ATS podcast, the imputed value of each entry, meaning that let's say the prize pool is, I'm going to make it very simple. The prize pool is $15 million. Okay. So let's say they got 15,000 entries, and let's say all of them, but 15 entries are left. The imputed value of each entry is $1 million. Because that's what the $15 million would be spread if the 15 people continue to go on. Last year, it was possible for people to sell 50% of their entry for maybe $75,000 by the end of October, still maintain half, and make $174,000 profit.
There was a story a couple of years ago where one guy had 4 entries. He was offered a lot of money for them, and it was down deep in the contest, and he refused. He refused the deal. He put all his eggs in one basket. He picked one team with the 4 entries. Mm-hmm. It lost. He got nothing.
I think that was similar to, I don't know if it's the same one because maybe it's a different one. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. There were like 12 people left with maybe 4 weeks to go. And 11 of them decided to split the pot. Yes. The 12th guy felt confident enough. He was cocky enough to say, no, I'm going to win this whole thing myself.
He was the one. He was the guy. Yeah.
Well, I thought he only had the one entry. Maybe he had.
True. He was a different guy, but he did the same damn thing and lost.
Yeah, exactly. He got nothing. You know, Jim, you and I talk about it. We mention all the time because people have different theories. It's another topic we can expand on. Money management, a series, and that's hedging. Do you hedge? You know, let's say you've got two teams of a 3-team parlay. The answer is I believe yes, because what you want to do, there's always risk when you make a bet. You could lose it immediately. You could lose 100% of your bet immediately. The goal is to get into a position where you have an opportunity to guarantee yourself a profit. So let's say you've got a 3-leg parlay and let's say 2 Sunday NFL games and the Monday night game, and you win the first 2, and let's say it's serious money that you're playing there. You guarantee yourself a profit by going back on Monday night, taking the other side. As long as you're not in a situation where you could middle yourself, you might even be able to middle the game. In other words, let's say you laid 3 points with Buffalo on Sunday and Denver on Sunday. So you got those 2 in, and now the opponent on another game is Chicago, Detroit Monday night. Detroit's favored by 4.5. Okay, so you take the and you've got Detroit. You've got the underdog minus 3.5. Let's say Detroit minus 3.5, and now it's 4.5. You take the 4.5 to hedge. You're guaranteed to cash one of those 2 tickets, either the 3-team parlay or the hedge, and you could middle both. You could middle on that Monday night game. But that's a topic for.
There's nothing wrong with going to making a profit. You'll never go broke making a profit.
Yeah,
you can always guarantee yourself that, Andy.
Let me give that information very quickly,
because that information one more time.
Okay. Yeah, the email. If you have questions or further information about how I do the proxy thing from start to finish, the email vegasandy711@cox.net. That's Vegas, one word, Andy, one word, 711, 3 numbers. So that's let's see, 5, 4, 12 characters at cox.net. Phone number 702-898-9802. And like I say, Circa's already started signups. Most people come into July, but during the month of July and August, even if we're Labor Day weekend, right before the season starts on September 4th.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you. I know this is long, but it's important, and I want you guys all to know about the contest. Don't say nobody ever told you, because we just did, and you have a way to do it. And you have a way to get a hold of Andy. And like Andy said, there's other proxies as well. But Andy does this show, and we would like you to support him. I know Mark and I both use Andy as our proxy. And Mark, of course, he lives in Florida. I live here, but you always have to have a backup. And it's important. And
it's advisable.
I did sign up at the Tuscany, and we had.
That's right. A very nice meal.
And we had lunch there. It was good.
Very nice meal.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to sign off, and we'll be back for most shows here on Proline TV. And make sure you sign up, you like, and hit the button so you can get the bell ringing every time we do something. Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks to all the listeners and viewers.